Welcome to month 17 of Digital DJ Labs core training, and we're talking about censoring tracks. As always, the what, why, and an overview of the how in this theory video, and in the next video, the practice video, we'll move over to the decks and have a look at how to do some of this stuff. Okay, so what we're talking about here, we're talking about anything we can do, so if there's any effect or any pre-performance step that we can take to obscure swearing or unacceptable language in our tracks. Usually it's a combination of slip mode or flux mode and reverse, to just hide the word or words that we don't want our audience to hear while not interrupting the flow of the track. This is often on one button or just on one easy function, so you don't have to worry about those two functions separately. So that's how it's normally done. It's built in to all software and media players, but there isn't always an easy way to access it. So bear that in mind. We'll be looking at how to get around that a little bit later. So why would you want to do this? Well, it's pretty obvious really, isn't it? It's inappropriate to play such tracks when children are present, for instance. It can be inappropriate for mixes that are planned for use on the radio, or indeed if you're mixing live on the radio, you're likely to get a slap and told you're not going to be invited back. If you do that on daytime radio, for instance, and of course if you're pre-recording something, it might not get accepted, so another reason to be careful. Also, depending upon your audience, religious considerations might enter into this as well. And also, to be honest with you, clean versions just sometimes can be playing better than the originals. The artists have had to be a bit crafty in the way that they've gone about hiding those swear words, and they tend to do better at times than the originals. So always worth having an open mind about this stuff. Cleaned up versions aren't always bad, although as we all know, certainly with a lot of hip hop, sometimes it's pretty much impossible to understand what the hell's going on in the track once the profanities have been taken out. Anyway, how do we do it? Well, the first way of doing it, and the very best way of doing it, is to get the clean versions in the first place. Now, you might not only want the clean version, you might want to keep the explicit version for your own use or for audiences where that's more appropriate. But if you can get hold of the clean version in the first place, then it saves you any of this trouble. So where do you get it from? Well, DJ download pools, DJ City, DJ Supreme, Promo Only are good places, or just your usual download stores. Just search for clean version. Radio Edit is always a good version to look for as well, because of course radio equals clean version. Always listen to check. You might find that something that's marked clean isn't. So if you can't get the clean version, or you've got older music that you want to tidy up yourself, well, you can edit the originals using Audacity, Audition, or any digital audio workstation. You can do it with the instrumental version if you have it alongside, and then you can just switch to the instrumental version momentarily when the word that you want to cut out is present, and then switch back to the lyric version afterwards. It can be quite a clean way of doing it. Or you can even make your own instrumentals by using software such as X-Tracks Stems, which tries to remove the vocals from tracks. So that's another thing to bear in mind if you're trying to clean up a track you really want to play when you can't find a clean version. Now, other ways of doing it include in Rekordbox DJ, there actually is a ahead of time censor function where you can go through your tracks within the software, and then when you play them back on that program, it will play back with your censoring done. So this is really good if you think you're going to forget to do it, or you're going to miss one or two as you're going through. Of course, you've got to know the track quite well in order to censor it on the fly, haven't you? So if you are going to be censoring on the fly, we're kind of moving down the ranks of what's desirable here, because you're going to have your wits about you. Marking your tracks explicit or clean is a very good idea, especially if you've got both versions of them, so that you don't accidentally load the wrong version. This is where color coding tracks in your DJ software can be a good idea. You could use red for explicit and green for clean. This can just remind you when you load them onto the decks that you're going to be doing this manually, or that the track's okay and you needn't worry. So you can also program your keyboard or an unused key on your hardware to do this if it just so happens that your particular setup doesn't have something programmed to let you easily do that in the first place. There probably already is a keyboard shortcut, but you can always map a key, and we'll show you a couple of examples of that in the video that comes next. So that's censoring tracks. That's the theory of it. It is worth doing if you haven't got a workflow for doing this in your DJing already. In the next video, we'll have a look at some of the things we've just looked at in that right-hand how column as to how we're going to go about doing this. Okay, let's look at censor in action. DJ controller, DJ software, song that really needs our help. So we'll listen to it. See you driving around town with the girl I love, and I'm like, fuck you. I guess the change in my pocket wasn't enough. I'm Okay, so great song, not good for the kids, right? So how do we do it? Well, the bleep button, as it's called here, but it does exactly the censor function I've been describing, is our friend. And I'll do that first opening sequence one more time, and I will bleep out all of that swearing. So we've done it, we've hidden the swearing and no one has been offended. But what if you don't have that button? Well, on the keyboard of your computer in Serato, you can just press U to have the censor function on the left deck and J on the right deck. Rekordbox is S on the left deck and J on the right deck. And if you're using Virtual DJ, it's U on the left deck and J on the right deck. And in Traktor, you can choose an effect called reverse grain and have this ready to drop over the track that you're playing, which does exactly the same thing. It plays backwards and also engages flux mode, which is Traktor's version of slip mode. Now, there are other systems that might not have censor buttons at all, or you might just want to ring the changes. And there is another way of doing this. So how do we do it? Well, remember, that button's doing two things. It's playing the track backwards from the second you put your finger on it and hold your finger on it, and that stops the swear word ever being heard because the bit that's just played is just going backwards. But the second thing is it's leaving the track playing underneath, so when you take your finger off it, the track will be past that swear word and you're off, but without interrupting the flow of the track, without interrupting the groove of the track. So that's why it's as easy as holding your hand on the button for just as long as the swear word is playing and then taking your hand off. But the fact that that second thing happens, the fact that the track is playing underneath until you stop doing something, is actually what slip mode is all about. So if you have a slip button on your controller, or flux as it's called in Traktor, and you don't have a censor button, then you can still do this. You just have to do something else. So one easy thing you can do is set a very, very small loop, trigger a loop, and then when the swearing is finished, stop the loop playing, and that will be enough to hide the swear word. So that's, for instance, on this track, let's just start it playing and I'll show you some looping. That's quite a long loop. This one here, that's pretty hard to know what's going on there, right? It's not very musical, it's just a noise. So we can use that, we can have our loops ready, and we can use that with the slip button turned on to hide our swearing. So let me show you how that happens. Let's get that back to the beginning. Go, turn slip on. Here we go. And again, we've done the job there without needing that censor button. Okay, so another thing I mentioned was marking your tracks with a color in order to warn you that you're going to have to do something like that. So let's go over to the screen and look at this. So there are two versions of this track on here. They're actually not the clean and the explicit version. They've actually got different names because it was released for the charts with the cleaned up version. So nonetheless, let's show you the concept. You simply choose a color for the clean version. So let's go for green for clean. And you can choose a color for the offending version. Let's go for red. So in Serato, at the top there, you can see that even the whole platter has changed color in order to show us that, well, this should always be a warning to us now if we go through our whole collection marking everything with explicit lyrics in that way. And this one here, if we're worried, you start playing a track and you're not sure if you started playing the explicit or the clean version, by marking the clean versions as such, it can just rest your nerves. Now, if you're a Rekordbox user, there's a pretty cool function called Active Censor. And this is selectable from the on-screen pad mode here, and it gives you 4 ways of censoring a track: reverse roll, transform, echo, and vinyl break. You can mark in and out points in your track ahead of time and mark multiple in and out points. And this is really cool because you can go through your track censoring out all the words. You get a chance to edit them and clear them if you get them a bit wrong, and then when you've finished, you can turn the whole lot on or off. So in other words, you could play the explicit version of the track, or just by clicking this one on button at the beginning before you play it, it will automatically take all the swear words out. So it's pretty cool. Let me show you how it works. I'm going to use in and out to mark the first curse word. There we go. So we've now got this curse word marked here. And by pressing on or off, I decide whether the software is going to take this and any subsequent words I've marked out or not when I play the track. So turning it on, it looks a bit like a loop function, right? But it isn't. So let's just play from a bit before. And I can go through and do that with all the words that I don't want my audience to hear. And next time I load the track, they're all there for me. As I say, you use on and off to decide whether you want to play the explicit or the clean version. So that's pretty cool. Unique to Rekordbox though. So what if we want to do this ahead of time and we're not a Rekordbox user? Well, as we know, there is software that can do that. Let's look at one of the pieces of software that lets us do it. This program is called Audacity, and it is your friend if you are a serious DJ. If you don't have this program, go and get it. It's free. And it's a wave editor. It lets you get stuck in to your music and start doing clever stuff to it. You can use it to trim the beginning and ends of tracks, but in this instance, we're going to use it to remove our swear words ahead of time. So right from the beginning, let's play and find that first offender. Okay, so there it is, just here. So let's zoom right in there, highlight it, and I'm going to do two things. You can experiment with this yourself, but if you do both of these things, I'm going to reverse the word, and I'm also going to use something called a vocal remover, which is a reasonably new addition to this program. The pair of those together make it completely hidden, which is what we want. I'm going to zoom out a little bit again, and we'll just play from a little bit before then, so you can hear. That's the first one done. Let's just get rid of these two here. So there's the next one. Let's zoom in there. And you can be a little bit more careful than me here if you want. And again, I'm going to reverse it, and I'm going to use the vocal remover. Either of them doesn't quite do the job. So in this instance, there we go, it sounds better. And let's do the next one. There it is. Let's listen to the whole thing now then, with all that stuff done from about here. And there we have the beginnings of our clean version, and we just have to carry on, of course, and correct every other occurrence. And once you've done it, it might be a little bit time consuming, but it's done for good. Now, of course, as we've said, the best way of doing this is to get clean versions in the first place, or radio edits in the first place. DJ City, BPM Supreme, Promo Only, any of the other big download pools for DJs that you can subscribe to will give you these, and it'll save you a lot of effort. But sometimes we can't find those tunes. Sometimes we need to censor them. And in this video, we've looked at a lot of ways to do that. We've looked at ways of doing it live in all DJ software, including in Traktor, using the built-in effect that lets you do that. We've looked at the keyboard shortcuts that allow you to do that. We've looked at ways of